Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Cynthia Miller, and today we're going to paint a holiday wreath with a small cardinal bird perched on top. So I'm just going over the different components here of the wreath. We're looking at the berries with a little bit of detail. They are probably the most intricate, and we've got a larger, like a rosehip berry, and then we've got some smaller berries, and we've made two different colors of red. The rose hips are more cherry red, and the smaller berries have a little bit of sort of a pinky, deep pink quinacridone rose is what I used actually. And we finish it off with a black ink pen with this for the stems of the small berries. So as you can see, the circle is, make sure when you do your circle that it is about at least 2 inches in from the edge of the page, because you'll want to have it go beyond that circle. Now I'm using burnt umber here to outline my wreath. I thought it would be best to make that a little bit more clear, so it's easy to follow with the different types of components that we're making here. And yeah, I'm just making it sort of look like intertwined, bent grape stem, something like that. Although you don't really see a whole lot of it in this finished product, it does come through a little bit. And I'm just going over it another time and this is quite watered down burnt umber, and it just sort of gives it a couple of different layers. Looks like intertwining branches. I'm looking at the evergreen here, and just deciding how many I want to put. You can have them sticking out a little bit from the circle, or you can follow the circle completely around. What I'm going to do is have a couple of different directions here from the top. I do want it to sort of start out with one bough on each side at the top, and then I will make it asymmetrical as I go around. So again, using the burnt umber, I'm placing these boughs where I want them to sit, and so there I've got 3 at the top, as I mentioned, asymmetrical today. And they could probably go a little bit longer, but you can use the greenish color to extend them there. So just placing them where I feel are, sort of interesting. So I've got them coming from the top in 2 different directions, coming down to a little bit of a point in the bottom. And then I'm going to mix up some colors for the evergreen. And I've got the emerald green, I've got the dusk green, and I've got a little bit of burnt umber in there as well. So we've got, the ability to make the green a little bit more like an olive green with the burnt umber. We can make it darker with the dusk green. We can make it more brilliant with the emerald green. And of course, you're adding water to that as well to keep the tone light to start. So here we go. We're going to start putting the needles onto the boughs, and what you're going to do is just do really quick small strokes, and you're going to want to sort of imagine what that branch looks like before you get started, because you can start and they might go in the wrong direction. So just make sure you're placing them towards the end of the branch. And so I'm just going to go around to each of the branches that I've placed there. And this is just a start. They look a little bit sparse when I get them all complete. But as you see, when we go to the rest of the painting, we fill in with sort of lighter shades of the green in the background to fill it out. Because I think at first it does look a little bit sparse. But I've not taped my paper down in this one because it is circular. I like to be able to move it around a little bit. So just have to be careful where you place your hand and not to place it into the wet paper. But I'm just using the different tones of green in that mixture to do the shapes of the boughs. So I think these are more like a fir. We've got lots of Douglas fir around here. Cedar boughs are a little bit different, a little bit more intricate, but I think the Douglas fir fairly easy to replicate. And I like the way that this one turns out. It's sort of feathery. So the more light you are with your strokes, the more feathery it looks. And you see I'm doing this upside down, so just make sure that you get your directions of the needles going the right way to start. And it's funny, we have a natural ability to paint a certain angle, and sometimes we have to turn it upside down to get that opposite angle to look corresponding. So we've got the first layer of the evergreen on, and we will be adding more to that. We're going to move on to the ivy, or the sort of greeny blue leaf that is a part of the components of the wreath. Now, I initially used sage green in another wreath, and I want to use more of a blue color in this one. So I've put together phthalo blue and indigo blue, and it gives me a really nice, sort of cherry blue. And what I'm doing is just creating a stem and then some tiny leaves off from that stem. And again, just keeping with the curvature of the circle, and sort of filling in some spaces where I have not put the evergreen. It sort of is another base to the circle. And I'll just move around and do the different ones, different pieces of this. So here we have 3 of the leafed vines in the wreath, and we're going to move on to the berries. And so again, we're just going to sort of do it section by section. We're going to choose where we want some berries to be, and we'll start with the big ones. And as you see it, we've got a little tiny spot of white in each circle. So we're just doing little circles and making sure that the white spot shows through on pretty much all of them. Now we're making them a little bit oblong, so it doesn't really matter what shape. They're all different shapes, but basically a small circular with a little bit of an oblong shape with a tiny little white dot in the center. That's is very simple way to do the berries, or the rose hips, basically is what they are. So the colors that I used for this first layer of rose hips was the Madder Lake Deep Red, and that is a Van Gogh color, and I also used a little bit of the No Name Red. So it's given a nice sort of cherry red. You want something that is bright, and the rose hips are anywhere from red to dark brown, so either is fine. But basically you want to remember to put that little white spot in the center of them. So I decided to go back to add a little bit more depth to these boughs of evergreens. I'm going to put in some more dusk green, and I will focus on the center branch of the boughs. That is where the darkest area is, and I just want to give it a little bit more depth there. When you're doing the different sections, you've got the boughs, the berries, and the leaves. You want them to be sort of the same tone. You don't want the leaves to be really light and the cherries to be really bright. You want the tones, the depth of the color to be similar throughout. So I realized that the cherries were quite bright. I'm putting a little bit more depth into the evergreen branches here. So I've gone around the wreath and added a little bit more into the boughs, and now I'm doing the same with the ivy. I'm adding a little bit more of the phthalo blue and indigo blue mix to bring out the stems and a little bit more detail on these leaves. And so what we're trying to do is match the tones of these 3 different components so that one doesn't, sort of blare out there too loudly. We want all the tones of these components to be similar. So we're adding now the smaller berries, and I'm showing you an up-close view of the quinacridone rose at its purest. And you can mix it with a little bit of the other red if you like, or you can just use a completely different shade. But this is the quinacridone rose. And basically what I'm doing is just going in there with tiny little spots, and I'm not worrying about any white reflections in the berries or any centers. We'll just put little bunches of them here and there, maybe just 3 in a place, maybe 6 in another spot, and just sort of go through and add in those berries where you think they might fit in. So we just finished up putting in the small berries, and we have a black ink pen. It's Archival Micron 08. And this is what we use to put in the stems for the berries. And as you can see, we're just like joining them up, and this sort of gives it the look that they're in little bunches. Now, as you can see, I'm putting a small dot on the opposite end of the berry that the stem is. And for the rose hips, I'm just doing a hairy little spot on the end of it. So a lot of the rose hips will be hanging down from the top, and they'll be sort of be sitting at the bottom of the wreath, pointing upwards. So just pay attention to where you put those little black marks. I'm putting in a few little berries there, just filling in those spaces. Now you have to wait for that paint to dry before you go in with the black pen. You want to make sure that you don't sort of blur them all together. But yeah, just going in here and again just letting the cherries dry, and then, or the berries dry, and then adding a little bit more to these boughs. And what I end up doing is really giving it more of a filled out look, because it looks a little bit scrawny to me at this point, and so I actually end up putting a little bit more green in behind the berries. And sometimes if you're doing freestyle like this is how you do it. You do a little bit, you look back at it, you sort of figure out what it needs. I like the way the boughs come down to the sort of lower right, but they also need to be filled in a little bit to bring those boughs. So just imagine there's boughs at the back of the wreath. And of course I'm adding water to the green to just sort of give it a little bit more less dark look to it. And I'm really bringing those boughs out to make it round, because they sort of just look like they're hanging, right? Like I'm trying to give it a more of a round shape. So I'm going around to all the different berries now. They've pretty much dried, and using my black ink pen and just making stems from the berries into the circle. So you want to have the stem sort of moving all in the same direction into the circle. You can sort of see that brown circle that we started with. And so the ones at the top, they hang down. The ones at the side are sort of hanging from the side. And as I go around, I'm also adding the little tufts of hair to the ends of the rose hips to make them look like they are, they've got sort of an outer core to them, and they have an opening on one end that has a few little hairs. We have those growing around here too. So, you can, depending on where you live, what kind of berries you have, you can choose different colors, different shapes, different accents. But just adding those dots into the small berries just makes them look like they've got a bit of a realistic look to them. So I'm adding a little bit more depth here yet to the boughs, and this is sort of where I bring out the circle a little bit more, giving a little bit more shape. I like the way that it sort of fills in the background, keeping the darker boughs at the front a little bit more prominent, and sort of filling in the back with lighter shades of green. And you'll see as I go on, it really does take on a nice shape. I like the way that it's sort of feathery, hanging down, and I like that look. So yeah, just continuing to work through all the different components of it. And here I'm going in with a little bit more of the phthalo blue and indigo blue, just getting that, again, the tones. You can see with the ones that I haven't done yet, they're just a little bit too light in comparison to the tones of the boughs and the berries. So just bringing out that blue as an accent. I really love these three colors together, and it sort of helps to make that a little bit darker behind the boughs. So you can sort of see it's a shadow behind there. So just working out the different leaves, and so this is basically the third layer I've put on these little ivy blue leaves, and yeah, just you leave a little bit of the blue behind, but this third level just sort of gives it a little bit more oomph. And I like the way this is coming together, so just working away here. So I'm taking one last look at the wreath, just making sure that it sort of looks aesthetically pleasing to the eye is sort of the last piece of this. And I've been sort of toying with different ways to top up that spot at the top of the wreath. Obviously, you can put whatever you like in there, or nothing at all. But just going over some details with the pen while I decide. And then I finally figured out what I wanted to put up there, and it was the cardinals. So I've got this thing about cardinals lately. I've been wanting to paint them. So yeah, just sort of going over the boughs with the pen, and making sure that all the berries are covered with stems, and everything looks asymmetrical and ready to put on that last finishing touch. So I drew earlier a birdhouse with some cardinals, which I'll maybe do next week. But I wanted to draw on the bird here, and I'm using my sketching for reference. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you have to turn it upside down to get those curves to go the way you want. And so, yeah, just sketching it on there very lightly. Cardinals are a beautiful red colored bird. At least the males are quite vivid. I just wanted to add this to the top of the wreath. I thought it was a good spot for him to perch. So I've got it sketched in there. And I use similar colors to the berries, the Madder Lake red and the No Name red. And there are a few darker spots on the bird, the wings, and it's got quite a black marking on the face. Now the bill is quite orange looking, so it's really pretty bird. And just going through the different sections of the bird here with the red shades, and keeping a little bit of white showing through for accent. And they're quite a chubby looking bird, so you want to make sure that belly shows that it's well looked after with these feeders in the winter. A lot of people love the bird feeders to attract the birds, and it's such a beautiful thing to watch birds. It really is. And so just filling in the details of him. I used a No Name orange for his beak. Very simple to do that. And then I brought in just a little bit of the burnt umber for his feet there, just to give him a little perch. I probably could have made this guy a little bit chubbier. And I've used the Payne's Gray, black for the front of the face and the eye. Very simple, but very striking bird. And so just filling in the details there, and that pretty much completes this wreath. I really enjoyed doing this. It's very colorful, and I hadn't actually done this much detail before, so it was kind of fun trying this out. Got a little bit of dark color under the wing there, and yep, decided to make him a little chubbier there. That looks better. And so just make sure that that wing shows through too, otherwise he looks like he's a wingless bird. But yeah, just a tiny little mark there makes all the difference in the world. So I hope you've enjoyed that. We did this in our paint class this week, and yeah, it was a fun project. So hopefully you can join us on our paint circles one of these days. Have a great holiday season.